Well, my body lies over the ocean. My body lies over the sea. Ooh, my body lies over the ocean. Oh, bring back my body to me. Bring back, oh, bring back
Welcome to the Scott
my
Arizala
body.
Show, presented by camphacker.org. My name is Travis Allison, and Scott, it's great to see you again.
Great to see you, Travis. Thanks for having me once again. I'm so excited about today's episode, the topic of favorites. I'm really interested in digging into this one with you.
That's great. It's going to be a great show. So, Scott, why don't you tell us about a moment where favorites came into play in your camp career?
Well, I guess it's more about how we talk to young people about favorites. It's exactly how I learned to deal with favorites when I was growing up as a staff member at camp. I remember so clearly my camp director, actually a couple of different my camp directors saying this, and I've actually been at, frankly, hundreds of camps and watched this happen. Where the camp director, kind of gets up and stands up in front of the staff, and as everyone's sitting in the dining hall or wherever, and he or she says, "All right, folks, for the next little bit, we're going to talk about favorites, and we're going to do some training around favorites. So here's the deal: we do not have favorites at camp. Are there any questions?" And then they move on to the next topic. It's like that's it. And it always struck me that moment because, I should say this, it has struck me as I developed into a camp trainer and I started visiting a lot of camps because, it's just not true. That's not how we operate at camp. It's not how we operate as human beings. I think we're doing our young people a disservice. We're doing anybody a disservice if we stand up in front of them and say we don't have favorites at camp. Of course we have favorites. That's just how our personalities work. It's who we are as human beings. Of course we're going to have kids that we like more than others. It's just the simple reality is that it's how personalities work. Sometimes you connect with people, other times you don't. I don't care if that person happens to be 8 or 12 or 14. It's the same thing. I think what we've done is we've created a situation when we do training like that, we've created a situation where, our young people are bound to fail. And then they don't know how to deal with it when those feelings start to come up. And so they sort of deny them. And they sort of go back to the mantra of, I don't have favorites. I see all kids the same way. And it's just not reality. In fact, about 3 years ago, at my camp at Dragonfly, I was doing some training and I was trying to make this big point about favorites, and so I stood up in front of everybody and I said, look, of course you're going to have favorites at camp. That's how personalities work. You're going to notice right away. You're going to notice in the first few minutes that you have a group of kids together that you like some more than others. That some are really cool and are easy to hang out with. Others you don't like and are not that cool and are really hard to hang out with. There's a bunch of kids right in the middle who don't really sort of demand your time in any way, shape, or form. And you've got to be able to deal with that. In fact, I think you'll find this funny, Travis. I was trying to make such a big point of this that I went to the next level. Now I don't suggest anybody doing this because it was kind of awkward. But I stood up in front of my whole staff and I said, here's the reality, folks, is I've got favorites in this room. And 70 of my staff are right there. And I said, I like some of you more than others. And I just let it sit there for a minute. And it was pretty super awkward, But then I said, the reality behind favorites and what we're going to get at in this training as far as what I was doing with my staff and of course what I want to talk about with you right now, it's not about not having favorites, it's about what you do with the feeling. So I think the first step is really saying to yourself, okay, of course I'm going to have favorites, right? And I'm going to feel that feeling. So what does that mean? How do I recognize it? And then, the hard part about favorites, how do I do something differently because of that feeling? How do I behave in a different way because I'm noticing that I like these kids over here, I don't like those kids over there, these kids are somewhere in the middle, that kid's really weird, you know, whatever it is that's sort of giving you these different feelings for different kids.
So what do you do then, Scott? What are the things that you notice about yourself when it comes to your favorites?
Yeah. I mean, I notice a handful of things with just myself. One, it's like I'm clearly like attracted to some people. I clearly like to talk to them. I like to hang out with them. And one of the things that I, as a supervisor, have to be really good at is where I spend my time. You know, when I'm supervising 60 or 70 people, I obviously can't spend time with every single individual. There's just not enough time in the day. I think the same can be said for an 18, 19, 20-year-old camp counselor who has 8 or 10 or 12 kids in their group. I think it's very hard over the course of a day to spend really quality time with each one of those kids. So one of the things that you've got to, after you start to, after you give yourself the ability to recognize that feeling, well, what do you do now to change some of the behavior? There's really simple stuff. I mean, I want you all to think about where you're sitting at meals. I want you to think about what your face looks like, what your body looks like on opening and closing day at resident camp, or on sort of drop off and pick up for day camp. I want you to really think about what you look like when each one of those kids are coming. And I know it's hard because you don't think about that. You don't think about what your body looks like when you see that kid who's like so much fun and you had such a good time with yesterday, and what your body looks like when you see that kid who, you know, kind of drove you nuts yesterday. Or for resident camps, you know, the kid who, oh, you've got that kid in your cabin, oh, watch out, right? You know, all those kinds of things. So simple stuff like, what do you look like? Where are you sitting at meals? Who are you walking with? Who do you engage during an activity? Who do you sort of sit down next to and talk to? Who do you talk to after the activity? I mean, all those sort of small things are indications of where you're going to spend your time. For the supervisors who are listening, one of the things that I think you can do is role model how you balance your time. Just like camp counselors, I just made the case that us as supervisors, we have favorites too. We have a whole supervision structure at my camp that tries to role model from me all the way through to the counselors. How do you give people individual attention? And so one of the things that I do is I pay a lot of attention and I spend a lot of one-on-one time with my unit leaders. I've got 12 unit leaders. And I noticed the first year that I was trying to do this that I was sort of running around crazy. And as you may have guessed it, the 1 or 2 unit leaders that I just really enjoyed spending time with, that I liked, that I had a good relationship with, I've sought those guys out more. The ones that I didn't get along with necessarily, that I maybe wouldn't sort of choose to hang out with if we weren't at camp, I sought out those guys a lot less. And then there was a big group of my unit leaders in the middle that it was like hit or miss. Sometimes I saw them and I pulled them aside, sometimes I didn't. So I developed just a strategy, in fact I can show it to you, a strategy a couple summers back, where what I would do is on my clipboard, not on the back, but underneath where all the papers are, I put a grid. Now I know probably many of you can't see this, but it doesn't really matter because all it is like the names down one side and then every day of the summer across the top. And what I did is I just started to take a note every time I hooked up with one of my unit leaders. Every time I had a conversation, I started to write it down. And I wasn't writing notes of the conversation, it was literally like a check mark in the box. And then I got a little bit more fancy with it. I decided to put a plus if it was something that was really positive, or a minus if it was something that was really negative, or sort of a slash if it was something that was sort of neutral. But either way, I was starting to then track day by day, week by week, where I was spending my time. That allowed me to have a much more balanced approach to where I was spending my time. I think it's small ideas like that if we change, we have an ability to sort of work with that feeling of favorites.
And I think the nice thing about keeping track of that is a director's time is the best currency that we have to offer staff. We obviously don't pay any of them enough for the responsibilities that they have, but a moment of time with someone that they look up to, their director, their boss, etc., is something that we can offer to them to make their time at camp worthwhile.
Absolutely. I mean, not only that, but I think it actually that then turns into more quality experiences for kids. The reality is that as camp directors, we don't make the magic with kids. They don't remember us. They don't have the sort of intense connections with us. They do with their staff. The more that we spend time with our staff, the more we can help guide those folks, be role models for them, both in this practical kind of way of watch me and how I deal with spending time with everybody, but also in the sort of the quality of those conversations. Like, what are we talking about? The opportunity for staff to dig down into some issues. The opportunity for staff to say, hey, Scott, can I bend your ear about this kid for a second? And I don't need you to solve this problem. I just want to yell and scream because I've been having a rough day. The opportunity for those kinds of interactions, I think, is important as well, which again will affect both directly and indirectly the quality, the experience of our campers at camp.
3 Adventures International Camp Staff. 3 things you should know about 3 Adventures. 1. Our owners are all former camp directors. 2. We're a high-quality company that's easy on your budget. 3. Background checks. Our international camp staff come from all over the world, and every one of them has had a background check. No exceptions, no excuses. 3adventures.com, the site to get great camps connected with great staff.
What do you do then, Scott, with those kids who are hard to hang out with, who are socially introverted, or that you wouldn't, be naturally drawn to?
Sure. Well, the first step is this, right? The first step is recognizing that instead of being just repelled for a reason that we don't know about, but going after it. And then I think that's exactly it. It's that second piece of seeking those kids out, finding a way to connect with them, working at being really interested, asking really good follow-up questions to their conversations. Trying to get to know kids on different kinds of levels. Some kids don't want to talk, but some kids, just your physical presence of hanging out there is great. Some kids don't want to talk, but yet throwing a ball back and forth or a frisbee back and forth is like the best thing they could imagine. Other kids, don't want to talk, but yet if you're down at the lake or in the pool and you're, just tossing them around or having fun with them in that active kind of way, that's exactly the kind of connection that they're looking for. So I think there's sort of 2 pieces in what I just said. 1, seeking them out. We've all been in this situation where we see a kid coming, or for some of us directors and professionals, we see a staff member come in, and we don't want to deal with it right now, so what do? We turn the corner, we basically run and hide. We wouldn't label it that, but we all know that feeling of sort of turning the corner and saying, oh, I'm really busy, I'm in the middle of this thing, and kind of walking fast to the other place. So seeking them out. And then the second thing is creating a really good relationship with them. Getting to know them on a different kind of level, because that will then inspire how we connect. Is this the kind of kid that I'm just going to sit down next to a rest hour and we're both going to read a book, but we're physically next to each other, so therefore he or she's getting that same kind of attention? Is this the kind of kid that I have to sit down with and I have to ask a number of follow-up questions about something that I'm totally not interested in because he's 10 years old and he just wants to run at the mouth about Pokemon or whatever? I mean, whatever it is, we've got to be the adults that seek that out. The best leaders, and eventually, Travis, you and I will do a whole episode on leadership. But the best leaders, in my opinion, aren't just, well, this is the way I do it, so you've all got to come to me and respect my way. The best leaders, as far as I'm concerned, meet everybody where they're at, so they know I have to be this way for you, and I have to be a little bit more hands-off with you, I have to be a little bit more clear with the next person, so on and so forth. I don't think that's any different for camp counselors. I think the best camp counselors know that they have to engage kids on different levels and in different ways, and I think we have to exercise that skill to really sort of decrease the amount of favoritism that we play, I should say.
I'm interested, Scotty, in a couple more hints for counselors, but I do have a question for directors. How do I, on my own personal time, and of course this comes from my own experience, but how do I, on my own personal time, hang out with the people who will work for me or on staff with me who have become my friends without without having people call me on having favorites? Or how do I get, I guess another way to say it is, how do I get that personal time to be my personal time and get around the fact that I have favorites, or in this case, just friends on staff?
Sure. I mean, so I think it's a delicate balance, first of all. I mean, I think that, as camp directors and professionals, we're not devoid of our sort of human nature. We're not devoid of our social needs as well. I know a lot of directors that kind of take it to what I would call sort of an extreme kind of place and say, you know what, during the summer, during the 10 weeks, I don't hang out with my friends. We don't have time off together. I don't go to the bar. Blah 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 blah. That's one approach, and I think that's one approach that anybody could employ to back away from the optics of favoritism. I personally think that's really not only hard on you, but if you're not getting the kind of social outlet that you need, chances are you might the abilities and skills that you have as a leader might start to degrade over the course of the summer. We need that connection. We need that social outlet. So a couple things I would suggest. One, I would suggest being really clear with your staff and saying it out loud. I remember as a camp counselor or as a camp director in upstate New York, I had some of my very best friends on the planet who came and worked with me. And I said it out loud. These guys, this unit leader or that, counselor or whoever they were, that program director, these guys are my best friends, and I'm going to spend some of my time off with them. I want to work to get to know everybody, and I want to be able to socially know everybody as well. But I want to just be clear who these people are for me, and I just said it out loud. And that can be hard, and that can be could potentially maybe even backfire on you. But I think that at the end of the day, honesty is going to be one of the best ways to go with some of this, so that people know what your relationships are. But if you heard in that comment, there's sort of a second piece, which is a genuine effort to socially kind of get to know everybody. And this is where I've used what I call sort of staff life events in the past, because we're not talking about necessarily time off. My time off and your time off is your time off, and I, as the camp director, have always sort of steered clear of where sort of the majority of my staff were going, whether I was invited or not, because it's their time off, and I don't necessarily want to be there inhibiting their time off per se. But I've always tried to use staff life events in that social kind of way. And for me, I've always been I guess I was a camp director for a couple summers of a day camp, but typically I've worked at resident camps. And so one of the things that we've done is during the evening time when we had some supervision with the kids as far as a rotation, we'd take everybody else and we'd just go do something fun. We would maybe set up a big movie for everybody to watch. We'd have a barbecue late at night. A couple summers ago, we had a big nighttime kickball game out on one of the fields. We just would do a lot of sort of social things at night. Not every night, not sort of overload, but enough that I was able to interact with everybody in a social way and get to know people in a social way more than just as the camp director. And I think that curbed some of that kind of feeling.
That's great, and thank you very much for that, Scott. Do you have any other final thoughts on playing favorites?
Thank you so much for asking it exactly like that, Travis, because there is a difference between having favorites and playing favorites, and that's essentially what we're talking about. Having favorites is natural and normal, and I want you to accept that about your personality, about who you are, and about the fact that you have decided to take a job in sort of this incredibly socially rich environment. Okay, you're going to like people better than other people. That's your coworkers, that's your campers, that's everybody. Playing favorites is something very different. Playing favorites is about the action. And at the end of the day, if we can remember that some of the smallest moments of playing favorites can be incredibly detrimental and extremely negative to kids' experience, then I think it'll help us guard against some of the expressions of that favoritism, and it'll help us be better at spreading our time out, at sort of engaging kids in a different way, at really trying to connect with all of the kids in our group or at our camp.
Thanks for sharing all those really great ideas, Scott. For those of you who are watching, if you want to find out more information about the Scott Arizala Show, please check out camphacker.org. My name is Travis Allison, and I appreciate you watching.
Yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. My name is Scott Arizala. You can check me out at thecampcounselor.com. I really appreciate everyone tuning in and watching, and we'll see you all next summer.
Well, my body